We'd like to talk a little bit about speaker modifications and speaker building. A speaker is mainly an enclosure with which to hold the back reflections that are produced by the driver to stop them from meeting the front reflections. We're not going to go too much into theory, but what it means is that we need a solid box. We need something that's nice and solid, that doesn't give a lot and doesn't vibrate. So whether you've made your box yourself or you already have a pre-existing pair of speakers, there's a way for us to modify it to make it better. So one of the things that we do is we try to stiffen up and give more rigidity to the cabinet. That's what these subwoofer braces that you see here. This subwoofer is about 400 watts, and when the compression and rarefication of the air inside gets to a certain point, all the sides start vibrating in sympathetic vibration with the sound. So we're trying to prevent that by adding these braces as you see here. We're going to be doubling the amount of braces and even adding them to some of the horizontal surfaces. There's a 2x2 that travels along the back side of this front here, screwed and glued onto it, because this front is very weak. With these two big holes in here, it's kind of a soft side. It really wants to give a lot. So we're trying to prevent all that sort of stuff from happening. And every time you do that, you're going to get more slam, less hangover, less colorations. And even in the mid-range, which is more affected by the bass because of this, the side starts bouncing around like this, and the mid-range cannot be done nothing else to it but be affected by that. So we're always trying to prevent that sort of thing. When we build a cabinet, one of the things that we're looking at is we're trying to make a good connection on the corners, and we're also trying to seal it up from the air getting in or out as we can. So many times when we make one like this, we'll use a long thin nail like this to hold the sides together while the glue sets, and then afterwards we'll take what we call a prick punch like this, and we'll take the nail and we'll divot it down into the head a little bit to give us room to put a round on it or to formica over the top. And this gives us a very strong connection. On the inside, we'll put gussets or 2x2s up into the corner to strengthen it further, sometimes going screws like this, sometimes screws like this. Anything that can make it tougher and less susceptible to vibrations. If the system is already existing and you don't want to affect the finish, that's fine. We can still do the same thing. These braces that you see here don't have to be connected from the outside. We can put screws and glue from the inside to add more bracing to a pre-existing system. Then we'll take a real neat setup here. We take some carpenter's glue and we'll put a little bit of it in a glass here and add just enough water to make it kind of liquid, very liquid. And we'll take our brush here and we'll dip it in there and we'll paint the corners and the insides, any place where it could use a little extra glue, we'll paint it, and what it does is it soaks in the wood, toughens up the connection. This can also go for speaker holes. You'll have speaker holes where somebody's had to screw in and out or stripped it, and so what do? You rotate the woofer a little bit and then you screw it in a little bit more, but we want to get past that. So what we do is we take toothpicks or slivers of wood, we dip them in the Elmer's glue, we take the opening, we dip that with as much Elmer's glue as we can, and we stick the toothpick into the hole and then we break it off. This adds more mass into the hole so that when our screw goes in there, it's got some meat, it's got something to tie onto. So we're repairing the mechanical structure of the speaker, we're adding more stiffness to the corner, more stiffness to the sides, more stiffness to the front. We take our caulking tube, take our caulk here, we caulk all the sides, all the corners, any surface that looks like it might have a little bit of extra weakness to it, we put our caulk on there. You can take a small mirror and a light bulb like we have in there now, and when you hold the mirror up, it lets you see around corners and lets you see into holes, so that it's the same as having your head inside there. So you can start looking for places, weaknesses in the structure. Many people may say, well, none of that makes a difference. No, everything makes a difference. There's not enough money in the world to make the best speaker cabinet. It's just not possible. So what we're trying to do is just trying to make the stiffness of it as high as possible, and the vibrations. We're trying to minimize all that sort of thing. Now that we've paid a little attention to the mechanicals, we want to do a little bit more about some of the acoustical problems that we're running into here. And even on a system like this where you have a very large port, if there's an air leak back here, it will affect the overall performance. Or around the speaker. One of the better things we've been using is something called rope caulk. It's very soft putty, and what we do is we lay this around the opening right behind the speaker, going around the speaker holes like this, and when you attach the speaker on there, it tightens up and squishes this out and makes a nice airtight connection all the way around the outside. We can do the same thing for the speaker connection in the back. Not all of them are made like this with a nice little gasket. So we take our rope caulk, we put it around here, we attach it back on. This adds a little damping, plus it gives us a better seal than we would ordinarily have. Many times, many of these connectors were put on 5, 10, 20 years ago, and hey, things change. Ideas, or maybe the stuff they used on there just shriveled up and went away. So you just take an old speaker, stiffen it up, tighten up the drivers, all that sort of thing. It's almost like going out and buying new speakers. So even on ports like this, these are really notorious for vibrating and being loose. We'll take a piece of this caulk, we'll wrap it around the outside, put a little piece of glue on here, and put it back into the port, and vibration gone. One of the things I've done in the past is you'll take usually maybe a wooden block or a rubber mallet or something, and you're looking for vibrations. You're looking for something. You're looking for the loose areas. Now you can hear the one I just found in the back. If I hit right here where the connection is, where the main stud is, it's pretty solid sounding, but if I go halfway between there and the side, there's a lot more energy there, and this is energy that will be held by the cabinet, re-radiated back into the air, back into the driver, and come back out into the room. Stuff that you don't want to happen. When a large signal comes along, boom! You want it to release that energy out into the air, and then it's gone. And of course, if some of it is stored inside the mechanical vibrations inside the unit, there's nothing you can do about it at that point. So this is why we're trying to stiffen all these sort of things up. Now, one of the things you hear a lot about are spikes and spike stands and things like that. And they sell all sorts of tiptoes and spikes that can be, relatively expensive. Here's an easy way for you to make your own. What this is a large lag bolt, as you see here, and what we've done is we've cut the top off and ground it down a little bit. Now what you do is you take this and you chuck this up inside of a screwdriver, an electric screwdriver or drill. You chuck it up like this, and it enables you to power it and drill it right up into the bottom of a speaker or a turntable stand or a shelf or something like this. You can drill it up to the point where there's maybe only about this much showing. And then after you have it up there, you can grab it with a vice grips right around here, and you can turn it back and forth and level your system. So instead of going out and spending a lot of money on some little brass cones that don't work as good as these, all you need to do is take a little one like this. Whatever you do, do not use drywall screws, because they are hardened and they will ruin all your tools and take the last couple outsides left of your grinder right off. So you have to stick with softer type like lag bolts, and they don't have to be this big. They could be, shorter or even skinnier. The idea behind the tiptoe point is that it raises the amount of pounds per square inch of force that the speaker is connected to the floor. If I take this speaker and I lay the whole thing on the floor, I take the square inches here, and the weight, and that's how many pounds per this how many square inches that it's sitting on the floor with. Now, if I take the same speaker and put it on this, now it's only touching on this much. It is the equivalent of thousands and thousands of pounds per square inch. Essentially, it's the same as taking this bolt the other way around, sticking it through the bottom of the speaker and bolting it right onto the floor. That's what we're doing. The reason for that is that any of the vibrations that are produced inside the speaker, inside the woofer, can now be sunk or absorbed by this connection to a large mass, the floor. So we're able to increase the amount of transparency the woofer or a mid-range or a tweeter will have by using tiptoes as a source of moving vibrations out of the cabinet and into the floor. Over here we have a good example of the alternative to that, which are we just call them vibration pucks. They're made out of a special elastomer that absorbs vibration. As you can see, they're extremely dead. These are mostly preferable to tiptoes because they don't gouge up the floor, spike feet, or do other various nasty deeds, and they appear to do just about the same thing. Although for a large subwoofer like this, you really want bigger ones than this. You'd want some nice big 4-inchers or something like that. The larger the piece is, the larger the amount of energy it will absorb. But one of the advantages of this is that it works in the higher frequencies very well also. So you can put this underneath a turntable, underneath speakers. We've taken strips of this and laid it around here just to see what that does. It works really well, but it's very hard to do. All these little items add a lot to the quality of what we're able to do with the mechanics. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the acoustical portion of it and the electrical, but we'll just take that in just 1 minute. Okay, now on a speaker like this is what's known as a Diapolito design. You can see the two mid-range woofers on either side of the tweeter. Typically we would cross this over around 100 cycles so that we can get some real power in a subwoofer. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to absorb some of the reflections and refractions that are following along this surface here that are hitting these bumps and confusing the signal. So what we'll do is we take a little piece of foam like we showed you before. Now you can use one of these. This is an Olfa knife made in Japan, and it's extremely sharp. You could shave with this thing, legs or face, and it works a lot like that electric knife, and it's better for smaller things. So you use a slight sawing action, looking out for your hands, because that's a sure way to end things right there. Just give it a slight sawing action and it cuts like anything. So what we did is we took a little piece of foam and we're modeling it around the front of the speaker. Now originally I had one on another system that went all the way from the top to the bottom. It really helps. These edges and these edges here, they catch the sound and make it reflect off in a strange way that interferes with the music. If they were extremely high-end speakers, it would have nothing. You would see nothing but this little blip would come around here and then it would be flat all over the entire face, and even this part here would be down in there. But we can modify ours, and what we want to do is give it a slight cone shape in here. We don't want to kill all the refractions, so we'll take our knife and we'll just slowly, one by one, and we've done this to literally hundreds of speakers and tried a lot of different ways, and it's kind of more the merrier on a lot of systems. So we just keep hollowing it out to give us the kind of field of diffraction that we want. It doesn't have to be this thick. It could be only a quarter of an inch thick and still go behind the cover. This is a great way to improve a speaker, and it helps to make up for a room that has a very live and active sound to the room and not a lot of damping. It really helps a situation like that a lot.